Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here is pretty simple. You give us some material, could be articles, research, even your own notes, and we dig in. We try to find the really interesting bits, the surprises, the insights that actually matter.
Yeah, think of us as your guides, really, helping you cut through all the noise and get straight to what's important about a topic.
Exactly. And today, we've got something I think is really fascinating. We're looking at excerpts from H.G. Wells.
Ah, Wells.
But maybe not the Wells you're immediately thinking of. Forget the Martians or the time travel just for now. This is more of a deep dive into, well, into relationships, into societal pressures, that whole human struggle to find meaning.
Right. Our sources today focus on this really compelling story about a young woman, Marjorie. We follow her relationships, especially with this man, Trafford, as they sort of bounce between very different worlds, trying to figure things out, trying to find a purpose together, maybe.
Okay, so let's crack open these sources then. Let's unpack this. Where do we first meet Marjorie? What's her initial setup?
We start off in the Pope household. It's in a place called Buriam Street. And the sources describe it as having this maundering freedom. It sounds a bit sprawling, maybe a little unconventional.
Maundering freedom. I like that phrase. It suggests a certain looseness, maybe. But it definitely contrasts with that other world she encounters, the Carmel splendors, as the text puts it.
Her sister Daffy's connected there, right?
Yeah.
With Kitty Carmel.
Exactly. And Marjorie feels this sort of inadequacy almost. Her equipment isn't quite up to scratch after visiting them, so you immediately get this sense of two different worlds pulling at her.
Yeah, that tension is there from the start. And the family itself, the Popes, what are they like?
Well, you've got Mr. Pope. He seems pretty wrapped up in his writing, has a bit of a quirky sense of humor. Some jokes sound a bit, dated now, maybe.
Salad dressing one? Yeah.
Right. But he can also be surprisingly stern. Like, there's this incident with a tennis racket, and he apparently kicked Marjorie out of dinner once just for hiccuping. It's just for a hiccup. That sounds, well, it sounds quite arbitrary, doesn't it? But maybe it shows the kind of unpredictable authority she's dealing with.
It does. And then Mrs. Pope, she seems more focused on, keeping up appearances, managing the budget, maybe doesn't fully connect with Marjorie on a deeper level.
And the siblings.
There's Daffy, her sister, who's kind of drawn into that wealthier Carmel circle and gets engaged to this guy, Mr. Magnet, and Theodore, the brother, who seems mostly interested in the dog, Toupee.
Ah, yes, Mr. Magnet. Let's talk about him. He comes in as a potential match for Marjorie, doesn't he?
He does, and the description isn't exactly flattering, is it? Thinning hair, an odd tie, gets nervous speaking in public. Mr. Pope apparently finds him amusing, a subject for jokes.
Which must be awkward. But Mrs. Pope is pushing for it, trying to see his true self, telling Marjorie to look with the mind, not just the eye.
But Marjorie's not buying it, is she? She has this inner voice, this anti-magnet sprite, the sources call it, that just sees him as, well, preposterous and flat and foolish and middle-aged.
That really tells you where her head's at, doesn't it? This internal rebellion against what's expected.
Absolutely. It sets up her core conflict perfectly. She feels boxed in by expectations. Be nice, make a good match, think logically about someone like Magnet, but inside, these insurgent voices are screaming no.
Plus, she's got money worries hanging over her head, those bills at Oxbridge. It paints a picture of someone feeling pretty trapped, really. Caught between duty and, well, something else she can't quite name yet.
Exactly. That's her world. Expectations, constraints, and then boom, Trafford arrives.
Literally drops in, yeah. His world is completely different. Science, research, molecular physics, wasn't it?
A whole other universe compared to Berrien Street dinner parties. And their meeting is pure drama. An aeroplane crash. Sir Rupert Solomonson's plane, but Trafford's piloting it, and he comes down right on the Pope's lawn.
You couldn't make it up. It's this huge disruption, just like Trafford himself is about to disrupt her whole life, and he's instantly drawn to her.
Instantly. The source uses this amazing image. Marjorie's like a shining sword thrust back into a rusty old sheath. He sees something vital in her, trapped by her circumstances.
And he doesn't back down, even when Mr. Pope objects. Strongly objects, it sounds like.
Not at all. Trafford just says, flat out, I mean to marry Marjorie anyhow. He's determined. Though interestingly, Marjorie initially asks him to keep their meeting secret. Maybe worried about her father. The source does suggest she later questioned that decision.
Right. But in the end, they choose their own path. Romantic disobedience, the text calls it. They elope.
They do. And then comes setting up their first home. This seems to become Marjorie's big project.
Yeah, she puts a lot into it, doesn't she? Trying to create this beautiful, sort of dignified space. The sources even list specific things, those Bukhara hangings, a particular desk, the chairs.
It feels like she's aiming for a certain standard, maybe trying to impress that societal judgment, represented by people like the Carmel girls, proving something.
But there's a cost. That mention of the budget, £300 as a maximum, it hints that this desire for the right look might be stretching them, possibly creating future problems.
It's a definite possibility. They've defied convention by eloping, sure, but those old pressures, especially Marjorie's focus on social standing, seem to be creeping back in through the way they set up their life.
And those pressures really come to the fore as they start navigating society together, right? Dinner parties, meeting people.
Exactly. People like Lady Solomonson and the Lees. The Lees seem particularly important as a contrast. Their lavish lifestyle highlights maybe the gap between Marjorie's aspirations and their current reality.
And then there's Aunt Plessington. She sounds like a force of
Oh,
nature.
so definitely. Described with loud, authoritative rudeness. And she has this movement she's very keen on. She wants to direct our mirth, apparently.
Her whole movement sounds quite controlling. This idea that the working class has too much free time and money and needs improving entertainments.
It's very top-down, isn't it? Lectures, classes, and this payment-in-kind idea she pushes.
Which leads to a clash with Trafford, right?
A big one. He really pushes back on the payment-in-kind thing, arguing about self-respect, especially when she talks about the dregs of society. Trafford seems genuinely disgusted by what he calls the cheapness of public life, the shouting, the lack of real investigation.
While all this is going on, Trafford's own work situation is becoming problematic for him. He steps away from pure research.
He does. He has this brief, very successful stint applying his science commercially making synthetic indie rubber. The source calls it systematic exploitation.
So it works financially, but not personally.
Not at all. It leaves him feeling totally disillusioned, like he's compromised himself. Cease to wash himself mentally is the phrase used. He feels he's traded intellectual purity for money. And he hates it.
And that feeling gets rubbed in his face by Dowd, his assistant.
Oh, absolutely. Dowd gives him this incredibly blunt critique. Basically says, look, you're the one benefiting from this system. You sweat us, you and the women you keep waste the money. He points the finger right at Trafford's privilege and responsibility.
Wow, that's direct. Does he suggest anything?
He tells Trafford to sell out and start a socialist newspaper. A pretty radical idea, which Trafford dismisses, saying he couldn't do it. But that whole exchange really throws Trafford's internal conflict into sharp relief. It brings in that wider social critique Wells is known for.
And while Trafford's having this crisis about his work, what's Marjorie doing? Is she finding her own way?
She's trying. She looks into various movements, but nothing quite fits. Socialism seems too big, and Plessington is too excessive, and just doing charity work doesn't feel like enough either.
But she does get involved politically, doesn't she? With a women's group.
Yes, and she apparently gives a really good speech. The source says it was like seasoned debating. She talks about the ideal versus science, the need for the vote, and makes this bold claim that women have to become an intolerable nuisance to get their rights.
So she's finding her voice, becoming active, but does this bring her closer to Trafford?
It seems to do the opposite, actually. His reaction to her meeting is really negative. He calls it a flood of rubbish, dismisses it as just chatter.
Ouch. That must sting.
You can feel the disconnect growing. Marjorie feels like her attempts to connect, even physically, just slide over him. He's frustrated too, lashing out about the whole scheme of things and mentioning someone called Barron's doing his research, which clearly still matters deeply to him.
The tension keeps building. There are these symbolic moments like her offering him the checkbook key, an ambush, she calls it, and that argument about her shopping.
That's a key one. He calls it jackdaw buying. Sees it as symbolic of everything wrong, this focus on acquiring things, the service of things, instead of pursuing deeper values.
Jackdaw buying. That's such a vivid term. It's not just shopping, it's mindless accumulation driven by appearances.
Exactly. It represents that trap of materialism. Trafford even theorizes that people pursue hobbies and distractions just to stay comfortable, to avoid looking too closely at uncomfortable truths, avoiding that relentless critical method he values in science. He feels they're both caught in that.
And all this dissatisfaction, this feeling of being trapped, leads him to make a drastic decision.
Yes, he needs to get away. He decides he wants to go to Labrador, just to think.
Labrador, wow, that's remote. What about Marjorie?
Well, initially it seems like he might go alone. But his mother steps in with some pretty sharp advice. She tells him point blank, you've got to take her with you.
Wise woman. What's her take on Marjorie?
She sees her as clever and lively, but directionless.
Nothing she is doesn't center on you, she tells Trafford, implying Marjorie hasn't really found her own core purpose, or maybe isn't focused enough on his. She even challenges him. If she cared, she'd understand, suggesting a lack of real connection or empathy between them at that point.
That's quite an indictment. But Marjorie agrees to go.
She does, although the sources note she delays her reply a bit. But yes, she agrees, and off they go.
What's the journey like?
It starts with a sea voyage from Liverpool, described as an uneasy distraction. Then they hit St. John's, Newfoundland, and the real challenges begin finding reliable guides, dealing with difficult rivers, tough portages. It's physically demanding from the outset.
So they're stripped of their usual comforts, forced into this raw environment.
Completely. The wrappings of civilization had slipped from them, as the text says, and this raw simplicity starts to change their relationship, their dynamic.
And then the accident happens. Trevor breaks his leg. Yes, a crucial turning point. It completely halts their journey. They're stuck in this remote spot in a makeshift place they call Lonely Hut, utterly dependent on each other for survival.
That forced isolation, that vulnerability, it must have been intense.
Incredibly intense, but it becomes this period of, well, transformation, especially for Marjorie. While Trafford's laid up recovering, she steps up. The sources talk about her feeling glorious fatigue and immense self-satisfaction. And crucially, she finds she's not being afraid of tomorrow.
That's a huge shift from the woman worried about bills and appearances.
It is. She has this moment, apparently looking at the northern lights, where she feels the infinite fragility of life. But also, underneath that, something deeper, greater, more enduring. The wilderness experience is stripping away the superficial and revealing this core strength she didn't know she had.
And this time in Lonely Hut, it's not just physical survival. It becomes a space for deep conversation.
Exactly. With nowhere to go and nothing else to do, they talk. Yeah, really talk. And Trafford starts articulating these big philosophical ideas that have been brewing.
Like what?
Well, he talks about how individual lives, seen on their own, seem almost empty. Nothing in themselves. Just links in these long chains of heredity and tradition.
That sounds a bit bleak.
It does initially, but he finds meaning elsewhere. He talks about participating in something larger, this collective mind, a sort of growing general consciousness of humanity. That's where the real value, the immortality lies for him.
So it connects back to his research, his frustration about barons doing the work he should be doing.
Precisely. It's not just professional jealousy. It's anger that his contribution to that collective human understanding, that collective mind, is being blocked. He voices this deep regret. I want research and the spirit of research that has died in me. He contrasts the excitement, the uprush of discovery with the busy death of his commercial life.
And he confronts their life together too, doesn't he, in that raw wilderness setting?
He does. He calls it out the continual cheating, damning struggle for money. And then he asks that incredibly difficult, honest question about Marjorie. Why was she worth it altogether? Looking back at how their life, their pursuit of comfort and status, pulled him away from what he felt was his real purpose.
Wow, how does Marjorie take that?
She meets his honesty with her own. It's painful, but she acknowledges her part. I've been a fool, she says, selfish, ill-trained, and greedy. She sees how women are often forced into roles as half-savages, half-pets, focused on domesticity, on making men comfortable, essentially distracting them by asking them to spread your minds out to backgrounds to households.
So this brutal honesty, it actually leads to a breakthrough, a shared understanding.
It seems to. From that low point, they start building a new shared vision. Trafford talks about salvation, but not individual salvation. He means for mankind. He lays out this kind of creed. God and man working together through science, art, philosophy, constantly testing, destroying, rebuilding through criticism to create a wiser and more lovely order.
That's a pretty grand vision. Does Marjorie connect with it?
She does this time. She starts to see it not just as his thing, but as they may be for us. A possible life ahead for them together, built on this shared purpose. It's such a shift that she has this sudden realization, good heavens, the absurdity. I might have married Will Magnet.
That really shows how far she's come. The idea of Magnet is just ridiculous to her now.
Completely. Their relationship is being reforged. It's not just affection anymore. It's a partnership with a mission. Trafford says, we'll go back alive. All that's settled for good and all, with a purpose. He even remembers something he thought back at the Lee's house that Marjorie was meant to shine, but he'd kept her hidden, realizing other men lived for their wives in a public sense in a way he hadn't. He saw the fundamental incongruity of her position then.
So they see each other differently now.
Totally. He sees her as this strong, capable, steady-eyed woman with the valiant heart shaped by the wilderness. And she finally sees past his awkwardness to his deep intellectual drive, his core purpose.
Do they acknowledge any remaining differences?
Yes. Trafford still senses a potential gap, maybe a tension between men's and women's focus, once they get beyond the purely individual struggle.
Oh,
He feels he reaches for an abstract level she might not fully follow, that she's more in life. But they seem to agree it's a matter of degree, not a fundamental split. There's overlap.
And the goal they've settled on. What does with a purpose actually mean for them?
It means getting free from that individualistic struggle, stopping the jackdaw buying, the service of things. It means getting back to what matters. Pure science, genuine literature, free art, philosophy pursued with regal sincerity. Basically dedicating their lives to contributing to human progress, not just accumulating stuff for status.
It's a powerful ideal, but they're realistic too.
Marjorie certainly is. She injects that note of realism. Don't exaggerate conversion, we shall fall away. They know it won't be easy, that they'll slip back into old habits. Their bond isn't just this grand purpose now. It's also sustained by the everyday things, little inconsecutive memories thinking about their children. It's a blend of the profound and the personal.
So they've found this clarity, this shared direction, but they know reintegrating into the world will be the next challenge.
Exactly. The transformation is profound, but the real test is coming.
And then finally, they can leave. The guide arrives.
Yes, Louis Napoleon, the guide, shows up, and that allows them to start the journey back. It's a long trek out, first to a place called Hammonds, then Port Dupree. There's a little detail about Marjorie knitting impatiently, maybe a sign that the pace of the wilderness is starting to feel slow as they near civilization again.
Possibly, and then the steamer arrives. The Grenfell.
Which feels very symbolic, doesn't it? Their transport back to the great wasteful world of men and women beyond, the world they have to navigate now with their new perspective.
And they have plans, concrete plans.
They do. Trafford is focus. Plan a laboratory. He's going back to his research. And Marjorie is completely behind him on this. They know they're changed. Trafford calls her his sun-bitten, frost-bitten wife, acknowledging the ordeal and the transformation.
But London looms large.
Yes, London. Described as a tempting and confusing place. That's the final hurdle.
And the sources kind of leave us there, don't they, with these big questions hanging.
They do. Will this clarity they found in Labrador hold up back in the complexities of London? Can they really live with a purpose amidst all the distractions and compromises of society? How do they integrate this new shared mission with their own individual natures and the world's demands?
The final picture is them heading home, changed, planning, determined to live differently, with the purpose, but knowing it won't be simple.
Right. Facing the challenge together,
Yeah.
but the outcome isn't guaranteed.
So to recap this whole journey we've traced through the sources, we saw Marjorie and Trafford start out constrained by society, struggling with their own conflicts and disillusionment. Then this intense wilderness experience strips everything bare, forcing them to confront themselves and each other, and ultimately leads to this profound transformation, this discovery of a shared purpose.
Yeah, it really throws a spotlight on that constant tension between what society expects and what you want for yourself, doesn't it? And that search for meaning that goes beyond just, making money or having nice things. It shows how relationships can evolve, how conflict can actually lead to growth if you let it.
So, for you listening, what does this story bring up, thinking about Wells's characters here? How do you navigate finding your own purpose, balancing the world's demands with your own needs, your relationships? What does it mean for you to live with a purpose versus just living?
It's interesting, isn't it? The story really suggests, especially through Trafford's ideas and their final shared vision, that maybe real partnership, a truly meaningful life, isn't just about being comfortable together or finding individual happiness. Maybe it's about striving towards something bigger than yourselves.
Like a shared goal, a contribution, a search for truth, something that pulls you both forward.
Exactly. Even though, as Marjorie points out, you're going to stumble, you shall fall away. Maybe the value isn't in achieving perfection, but in that shared effort, that commitment to strive together for something more. Does that idea land with you? Does it connect with your own hopes or experiences?
Something to definitely mull over.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into H.G. Wells.
We really hope it's giving you some interesting things to think about. Until next time.